Okay, thanks a lot, Alison. By the way, is there anything you'd like to say about the course before you go that you want to remind everybody about, or
I
do you
don't
think
think
we're
so.
all on the
I
same
think
page? Yeah.
no, I think we covered it all. I will be here through 3, so I'll be
Okay.
here for still a little while longer.
All right, that's great.
Yeah.
Um, well, now it's 2:23. We have until 3 o'clock. We're meant to actually finish the covering the correlates around 2:40. Um, but we could take a little bit of a break if anyone has a question and that you'd like to talk about it. Please show your hand, and I will try to reach out to you. If not, we can carry on. Let's have a look
Okay.
now. So we
I
have.
don't see any questions in the bottom.
No, I didn't see any questions. We've been joined by Alice, I see.
Yes.
Um, and okay, fine. So let's carry on. We've got. I've actually put up the page. Can you see my page, Alison? 7 Habits of Happy
I
People.
can, yeah.
Okay, great. Just to show you where we are. So we've covered. And can you see my cursor too?
Yep.
Okay, so we've covered relationships. We've covered caring. We've covered actually positive mindset. So rather than positive thinking, as Alison mentioned, it's about positive mindset, because mindfulness isn't really about thinking. It's about well, the positive emotions aren't really about thinking, are they?
No, they're not.
No, it's so I need
Yeah,
to
it's interesting.
change that word there. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a PowerPoint I used in China, and I just have to change the wording of that. But
Yeah, in a way,
um,
optimism is a way of thinking because it's cognitive. It's how you're explaining positive and negative situations. The emotional experience of optimism is really hope.
right.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's kind of mysterious, isn't it? Do
Hmm.
emotions come before intellect, or intellect come before
Yeah,
emotions? And maybe it depends upon the personality,
exactly.
because
Yeah,
because
they've shown it goes both directions. Yeah,
yeah,
for some people it
because
depends. Hmm.
Marty Seligman talks about in terms of dealing with negative thinking. He talks about disputing catastrophic thoughts.
Hmm.
And personally, if I have catastrophic thoughts, I can't deal with them rationally. I can't dispute them. I find it much more effective to actually go out and do stuff.
Hmm.
So maybe it depends on our personality, how we deal with that.
It's true. Yeah.
Those of you who are listening might not know, but Ray White is um, involved in is a member of our team, and he's very interested um, in this whole idea of uh, positive thinking, and how it could. Well, maybe I can deal with that later to the end of it, because we're running out of time. But he has some interesting insights in that area. Um, so let's go on to physiological factors. We've listed that as number 3. We've changed the order a little bit, but to be frank with you, we don't actually know what are the most important of the 7 habits. We don't know. I think there's a lot of agreement about relationships being very high up the totem pole, and caring being very high. But then with the rest of them, it's very difficult to say, which is among them, which is more important. And again, this depends upon our personality. And Ray, who I've just mentioned, talks about happiness soup, that we have these ingredients, but according to the individual, we like to play around with the ingredients and make one ingredient a little more powerful than the others. So I like putting a lot of chili pepper in some of my dishes. Um, so at any rate, I will deal with physiological factors now. I'm going to zip through this because we only have 10 minutes, and we want to leave a little time for question and answers. And in fact, we are getting more questions, which is great. And I'd like, actually, if possible, if each one of you could could at least have one question that we can chat about later on. So let me just go to Paul's PowerPoint about the physiological factors behind happiness. Let's see here. There we go. So let's just make this our current slide. So this is based on results, the research that Paul has conducted. And his specialty, he works at Yale University, and his specialty is actually light, and specifically seasonal affective disorder, which is one of the most brilliant acronyms I can think of, SAD, SAD. And Paul's research has shown that a very large, more people than we imagine deal with SAD or SAD, seasonal affective disorder. And it actually occurs in my family, I know, because I left England. One of the reasons why I left it, I didn't get it so badly as my grandmother got it, but I get a little bit of it. And that's one reason why I left England, because living in the Thames Valley in Oxford and in Denham, where I was born, you get 5 gloomy days in a row, or 6 or 7, you know. And that there's definitely seems to be a correlation between my mood and how many sunless days I've had. And the interesting thing is that according to this research, 9 out of 10 people at mid-Atlantic latitudes, which is where we are, experience changes in mood, energy, sleep, and appetite in the winter. And 2 to 3% of us experience what we call major depression. And it seems to me that it was my French grandmom, and I told Séverine that you know, my mother was French, and so was my grandmother, of course. They're Parisians. They've been Parisians for the last 300 years, but they made the mistake of moving to the border with Germany, Alsace-Lorraine, which is one of the gloomiest climates in the world. And one day my grandmom looked at my granddad and said in French, "I can't stand this any longer. I want to live somewhere sunny." So this was 1900, and my grandfather opened up a newspaper and looked for the jobs available column, and he was a veterinary surgeon, and there was a job being offered by the royal family of Egypt for a horse vet. And so they traveled to Egypt, and he was a horse vet for the pharaoh's horses, and that's why my parents met in Egypt. So it's very funny how, you know, you can use the negative and you can find a positive.
Yeah.
And so they lived in Egypt, and I think their mood was definitely affected. They seemed to be very happy in all the pictures I see. And my mom was born as a happy child too. So here we have Paul's conclusion here. It is now well established that treatment with bright light in the early morning greatly improves these changes in most individuals with SAD. And I would add that even if you don't have major, SAD, even if you have a mild case of the blues in winter, try going for a walk, unless you live in Greenland, all right, or maybe Scotland. And then you might need what's called a light box. And the light boxes are the latest technology, and they have this sort of light wavelength that has an special impact on people's mood. It's extraordinary. And apparently they use. I don't use it. My daughter uses one in where she's in northern New York State in Cornell, and she swears by it. And apparently, a few minutes of exposure in the morning has a big impact. If you're living further south, even in the winter, and here's the important thing: try to get out of the house before 8 o'clock in the morning and take a 20-minute or half an hour walk.
I think it's within the first half hour of when you wake up.
Yeah, that's especially effective. Yeah, I agree. But it depends upon you wake up, right?
Right. Yeah, because I'm thinking by 8 o'clock I'm up for a few hours.
Right. It's like 90% of the students I have wake up at 11 o'clock in the morning and
Yeah.
they walk into class with a cup of Starbucks. But probably, yeah, you're right. Most of the people listening now will be able to wake up to go for a walk within half an hour of waking up, and that'll be great.
Actually, Mark, sorry to interrupt, but I was just thinking, and I've never run this by Paul, but I know there's research on how people who have pets, that there's an increase in well-being with pets, and some of that has to do with having relationships and emotional bonding with pets. But I wonder too, because people who have dogs, especially,
Yeah.
they have to get up out of bed and outside and walk them within the first 30 minutes of when they wake up. So in a way, it can be a great way to force someone, who may not do that otherwise, to get out of the house and get out for a quick walk, because it usually is 10 minutes, at least 10 minutes long, the dog. So,
Well, it's very interesting you say that, because as well as I do, the research on people who have pets show that they're significantly happier,
yeah,
and maybe that's one of the reasons.
it could be. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have fantastic fun with I have a grand dog. I have no grandkids, but I have a grand dog. And when my son leaves him with me, I take him for a walk early in the morning, and I can tell you, yeah, it makes a huge difference. And it also makes a difference to see just how happy that little doggy is. So thanks for that input. Another discovery that is relatively recent is the correlation between omega-3 fatty acids, and one of the biggest sources of omega-3 is fish oil and happiness. And a lot of people write to us and say, well, eating blueberries or hamburgers or whatever, and they have all these suggestions about happiness and diet. And there's not enough solid evidence yet to say for sure, but fish oil seems to be the strongest candidate up till now. And in fact, historically, there's an indication that cultures that eat a lot of fish have a lower depression rate, which is very interesting. And as Paul says, meta-analytic studies indicate an association between lower levels of omega-3 fatty acids. So he mentions DHA and EPA. So if you can, get real fish oil, not the stuff that they're synthesizing in the lab. It's a little pricey, but it'll pay for your hospital bills. And the fish oil combines DHA and EPA between 1,000 and 2,000 milligrams. It's one or two. I think I would say 2 teaspoonfuls seems to be for people who have significant, depression. Up to 2 teaspoonfuls could be effective, and after that, they're not sure. And he also mentions that, of course, we're not totally sure about this, but there seems to be a lot of evidence that points to that. I don't know what kind of fish that is. Is it a sturgeon or is it a pike? Anyway, so and then another area is vitamin D and happiness. And here's the interesting thing: fish are also an excellent source of vitamin D.
As is sunlight.
Yeah, exactly. Sunlight enables us to absorb vitamin D.
Yeah.
So, or it stimulates that. So there's a very interesting connection there. So with decreasing sunlight exposure, vitamin D deficiency is common, because we're all spending too much time in front of our computers. And maybe that's another reason for the skyrocketing depression rates, is that we're spending more time indoors. But we've got to prove this stuff. Okay, so let's zoom on. Exercise and happiness is huge. There's been literally hundreds of studies about the impact of exercise on depression, and much less on happiness, but of course they're inversely correlated. And there's been I've just been reading an article this morning by someone called Daniel Landers, Arizona State University. And he's actually looked at 6 meta-analyses. So this guy has actually studied, he's pointing out the fact that when he wrote this, which was, let me see, some time ago, this was 2011, we already had 6 reviews of studies. And he's basically saying that exercise seems to be, in the long term, if we exercise for a period of months rather than weeks, it seems to be equally effective to antidepressants with anxiety or depression, at least as effective. So if you do decide to exercise, first of all, start slowly, please. I don't want to be responsible for any heart attacks, but be patient too, because it takes 2 to 3 months, according to many of these studies, to see a significant impact. So when you compare the impact of exercise and antidepressants, basically what happens is antidepressants will have a more significant effect, in the first 1 or 2 months. And then what happens is antidepressants, some of them tend to lose their potency. And then exercise begins to take off after 2 or 3 months. So the golden rule is at least 3 times a week. Start slowly. Exercise as much as you feel comfortable with what you can do. It should be, pretty vigorous. If you should sort of work towards vigorous exercise, and don't give up until you've done it for about 3 months. That's the bottom line.